End of the post-war consensus. Labour governments of Wilson and Callaghan. I'm A.
And I'm M.
Labour governments of Wilson and Callaghan. Political, economic and industrial problems and policies. By October 1974, Wilson felt safe enough to call a new election. Voters still associated Heath and the Conservatives with a 3-day week and conflict with the miners. Wilson won his majority only just. Labour gained 18 seats, the Conservatives lost 21. Labour had 42 more seats than the Conservatives, but the overall majority was only 3. The general election of 1974 resulted in a hung parliament. There was a poor economy and inflation was at 15% and the balance of payments deficit was at $3 billion. There were minor strikes and industrial relations that the government didn't know how to deal with, trade unions. The situation in Northern Ireland becomes more precarious due to Sunningdale.
2. Industrial relations 1974 to 1976. Wilson wanted to demonstrate Labour could deal with trade unions better than the Conservatives.
1973. Social contract with the TUC. Voluntary pay restraints by the trade unions. The repeal of Heath's Industrial Act and Pay Board by the government. Government made it clear it wasn't looking for confrontation. An agreement with the NUM was reached. Wilson ended the state of emergency and 3-day week. Task. Write down all you can remember about Heath's Industrial Act and Pay Board.
Left-wingers Tony Benn and Michael Foot were put in charge of departments of industry and employment. Wilson's Chancellor, Healy, issued 2 budgets, March then July, aiming to deal with the economic crisis without annoying the unions.
Economic reforms 1974 to 1976. There was a surge in inflation due to large wage increases deemed necessary to recover from the industrial crisis that brought down Heath. Healy stated that wage inflation causes unemployment, so it's vital to control public spending. In April 1975 budget, there were steep rules on taxation and cuts to public spending. Economic reforms 1974 to 76. The first major problem was a surge in inflation due to the rush of wage increases that were deemed unnecessary to get out of the industrial crisis that had brought down Heath. In January 1975, Chancellor Denis Healy made a speech in Leeds giving a stern warning of the dangers that wage inflation caused unemployment and that it was vital to control public spending. In April 1975, Healy's budget imposed steep rises in taxation and public spending was cut. Task. What other crises were responsible for bringing down Heath?
National Enterprise Board 1974 under Tony Benn. It administered government shareholdings in private companies and gave financial aid. Its effectiveness came into question in 1975 due to investment in lame duck industries. The government's decision to nationalise the failing car manufacturer, British Leyland, caused renowned controversy about the role of government in rescuing lame duck industries.
Social contract 1973 was not limiting wage demands. Therefore, by 1975, a more formal pay restraint policy was introduced. This intensified labour divisions, as the left wing had sympathy with the unions. Like Michael Foot and Tony Benn did not want to put so much pressure on the unions, and they also believed on more, not less, state intervention in industry. In 1976, March, Wilson suddenly resigned.
James Callaghan. Wilson resigned in 1976 after struggling to unite the divisions in the Labour Party and having to deal as a minority government. Callaghan was known as a safe pair of hands. He had a lot of experience and had strong links to trade unions.
Callaghan's premiership, 1976 to 1979. Through 1976, the poor balance of payments put pressure on the sterling, and there were concerns Britain did not have the reserves to support it, and there was anxiety that there may be a run on the pound. This led to an application for an emergency loan through the IMF. In September 1976, Callaghan gave a speech to the Labour Party conference where he warned the party that the cosy world, whereby the government could ensure full employment, was gone. Productivity would need to improve to avoid what he called the twin evils of unemployment and inflation. He argued that governments of the previous 20 years had failed to sort out this problem. This seemed to be criticism of both previous Labour and Conservative governments. This speech was made to help prepare the Labour Party for the fact that the government was planning to apply for an emergency loan from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Healey, the Chancellor, received $3 billion as a loan, but the government had to make huge spending cuts.
Application for a loan from the IMF caused the economy to recover. Economic situation was not that dire. It reinforced Britain's image of its economy on the decline. Conservatives thought of it as a national humiliation. Labour left saw it as a betrayal, caving into international financiers. Despite this, Callaghan managed to keep Labour united. The economic situation improved further by North Sea oil. By 1978, there were 9 oil fields in operation. Inflation rates fell to 10%. Unemployment was at 1.6 million. This was still high, but had started to fall. The number of days lost to industrial disputes was 10 years low.
Devolution, the transfer of powers to a lower level of government. Callaghan promised devolution for Wales and Scotland. Nationalists in Scotland and Wales welcomed this opportunity. However, the Conservative Party and many in Labour were against devolution. In 1978, devolution acts for Scotland and Wales were passed, opening the way for referendums. 40% of the electorate had to agree with it for it to pass. Eventually, in 1979, Scotland was in favour, but Wales was not. Therefore, devolution was defeated. As a result, disappointed Scottish nationalists withdrew their support from the Labour Party, which would have had a later impact after the Winter of Discontent. Devolution. By 1977, the Labour majority in the House of Commons had disappeared, so Callaghan strengthened the government by making the Lib-Lab Pact. In this way, he was able to defeat a vote of no confidence tabled by the Conservative Party. This deal meant that the 12 Liberal MPs agreed to vote with the government in Parliament, and in return Callaghan promised to move ahead with devolution for Wales and Scotland.
The Winter of Discontent, 1978 to 1979. Autumn 1978, TUC rejected the Labour government's proposed wage increase limit of 5%. This encouraged trade unions to put in higher demands. For example, Ford lorry drivers achieved a 15% wage increase in December after a 9-week strike.
This caused a wave of industrial action. It caused disruption to transport as lorry drivers and train drivers went on strike. It caused shock and outrage over hospital porter, clerical staff, and local councilmen, dustmen, and gravedigger strikes. Task. Watch this video on gravedigger strikes and their impact.
This industrial unrest was not on a massive scale or a serious challenge to the government. The dispute stopped in March 1979 and the average pay increase achieved was 10%. But the psychological effect of the Winter of Discontent had a devastating impact on public mood.
Problems of Northern Ireland. The special category status was removed from terrorist prisoners in 1976, meaning they were no longer considered political prisoners, but instead treated as criminals. Task. As a recap, what were the relations like with Northern Ireland under Heath?
Blanket protests. Refusal to wear the prison uniform for normal prisoners. Wanted a special category status back. This led to protesters wearing prison blankets or being naked.
Dirty protests escalated from blanket protests in 1978. Republican prisoners alleged ill treatment by their prison guards and refused to leave their cells. Therefore, they were unable to slop out, so smeared excrement on the walls. By 1979, 250 prisoners took part in the protests, increasing demands to have political status again. Oh, thanks guys.